Dallas Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation. Before we get started, I want you guys to go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. Definitely, please boost those likes, boost those shares, and those comments for sure. I want to know you guys' opinions because the Dallas Cowboys, again, this training camp is very interesting because we already know how the season went last year. So, of course, you're going to be looking to bring in new faces on whether it's talking about player personnel, the new coaching staff, all types of things. So let me know down below in the comment section how you guys feel about the trajectory and the path the Dallas Cowboys are on. Obviously, there were not as many free agent moves or anything like that, off-season trades or anything, as some of the fan base that kind of hope for when you hear about the front office saying that they're planning to be all in. But, of course, the Dallas Cowboys still have a very talented roster and some guys that you want to keep an eye on going forward. Over the last couple days, you heard about Stephen Jones, you hear Jerry Jones, their approach and the way that they're kind of looking at the way that this roster is starting to be developed. And obviously, with that in turn, we're talking about the contract situations of a Dak Prescott, a CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is not with the team right now due to the holdout, waiting for that new deal, that extension. But the Cowboys, now we're talking to hear from Stephen Jones over the last day or so, pretty much saying Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb have both received new offers, and the talks are in a good position right now. They're in a good space when it comes to conversation. So I'm gonna look forward and say I don't expect CeeDee Lamb to be not with this team too much longer. I've said already, I believe over the last few days, you're starting to see videos circulating that he's been working around in the Houston area, I guess trying to keep himself in shape, because we do know at the end of the day, there's nothing like trying to get yourself in football shape other than actually playing football. But at the same time, it's good to see that he is out there still working, still busy, because we do know we're talking about an all-pro level receiver. And in my opinion, we're talking about maybe top 3, top 4 type receiving talent in this league. And that speaks wonders because this league is full of wide receiver talent. So a guy like CeeDee Lamb, I don't think we've even seen his best days yet. So get him back in the fold. Hopefully these talks are ongoing, as Stephen Jones has said, and they can continue to chip away at this thing and get him back in the mix. Because obviously we're talking about not having CeeDee Lamb. You're going to be looking at some of the other guys. You're looking at a Ryan Flournoy, a guy starting dealing with a little bit of an injury. The rookie coming in from the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to say this is going to be one of those sleeper picks. And we're talking about sleeper picks in the mindset of, if you're watching a guy, the number one thing you're looking to see, what is he comfortable with? Getting very much so on the same page with your starting quarterback, Dak Prescott. And Ryan Flournoy, he starts to make some plays prior to the injury, a little bang up. It's not anything that's going to be serious, but you start to see him get on the same page with a guy like Dak Prescott. And that's going to speak wonders, because you're talking about also second-year player out of South Carolina, 7th-round pick last year, Jalen Brooks, another guy under the table and under the radar, I guess I'll also say, who's starting to find that little bit of a connection with Dak Prescott. But my guy I'm going to talk about going into this year is Jalen Tolbert. Obviously, we're talking about the number change going to number 1. This is going to be a guy, to me, I'm going to say that brings about the same mentality, that this guy just has confidence in himself, and you're starting to see him get better and better. The biggest thing we're going to have to see now is consistency. But when not having a guy like CeeDee Lamb in the mix right now, you're talking about still having that veteran presence in Brandon Cooks. The number one thing you're going to be looking for Jalen Tolbert to do is just continue to stay on the same path of just getting better and better. And we're starting to see some of these great plays. I believe a catch, a couple of days ago, just a quick body adjustment catch, and we're seeing just Jalen Tolbert. He has the physical capabilities. He has the physical ability to go out there and make these plays. But if we're going to have him on the same page with a Dak Prescott, this is going to be a guy, I'm going to say, obviously, we're talking about if we're able to keep a Dak Prescott with the star on his helmet, obviously, because we can talk about that a little bit. But having Jalen Tolbert, I'm going to say Brandon Cooks is not getting any younger. He's still very capable right now. But I'm talking about going forward in the future of the Cowboys, having CeeDee Lamb back with this team as obviously going to be your number 1 for years to come. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Jalen Tolbert is going to be a guy I'm looking to say that can be a number 2 we're looking to add towards the future consistently. And we're going to say a Jalen Tolbert, if he can just start to actually chip away and show that productivity consistently week in, week out in the NFL when the games actually get serious, and more important, we're going to have something to build with this wide receiver group, because we already know what you have in Jake Ferguson at the tight end position. We already know there are some guys, John Stevens Jr., a guy I'm very high on, and prior to the ACL injury in the preseason last year, unfortunately, you're talking about a guy like John Stevens Jr. I believe coming into this training camp, it's been said that already he's put on about 10-15 pounds of muscle. So we're talking about a guy about 246. He's still now having to work himself into just being able to be comfortable with running routes and just getting out of his breaks. But I'm going to say John Stevens Jr., he is a natural pass catcher. He's a guy I'm very interested and curious to see what we can kind of get out of that when we're looking and saying what exactly is he going to be playing maybe next with a guy like a Jake Ferguson, because I feel like Jake Ferguson has the capabilities and the potential to reach top 4, top 5 tight end by the end of this season. This is a guy, I'm talking about Jake Ferguson, I believe with over 700 yards last year, and that was, again, as I've said many times, the Cowboys passing offense didn't even start getting really rolling until about week 6 in the Chargers game. So you're going to be seeing Jake Ferguson have more intention and have more priority in this offense starting from week 1 going forward, just adding in more talent like a guy like John Stevens Jr. back in the mix. We're talking about obviously Luke Schoonmaker. You want to see what he can consistently bring, if he can just stay healthy and just actually start to, I don't say live up to that second round draft pick, because I still feel like that was he was chosen a little bit too high for that standard. But if you could get Luke Schoonmaker back in this mix, and then seeing where we get some of the undrafted guys we're bringing in, a span, we're talking about this is going to be a very capable tight end room. So the Cowboys are going to have to chip away and see what we have. But I'm going to say I'm just very high on seeing what Jalen Tolbert has done, and if we can get a guy like Ryan Flournoy back, obviously, like I said, while you're dealing with some of these injuries, let's say just some of these other guys around, and just whoever can just be comfortable with not having CeeDee Lamb out there, the Cowboys are going to do nothing but just put themselves in a better position for guys having a little bit more experience and just preparedness, I guess you want to say, when the games get more important. Again, with CeeDee Lamb not being in the fold right now, and the Cowboys not having 6th round draft pick out of Southeastern Missouri State, Ryan Flournoy, they brought in 2, I believe, UFL guys yesterday, in talking about, I believe, in Kelvin Harmon and Deontay Burnett. So the Cowboys are still trying to kick the tires on anything they can due to some injuries. And the biggest injury yesterday, unfortunately, crazy. I'm talking about, this is a guy I've had so much expectations for, high expectations coming out of Ole Miss. And we're talking about going into his 3rd year. I felt like this was going to be the year he could finally put it all together with more opportunity. And now having a defensive-minded coach just with no nonsense, and Mike Zimmer, Sam Williams. Unfortunately, yesterday, Carter off the field, and it finds out, it's confirmed that it's a torn ACL. He will miss this entire season. I believe last year, 4.5 sacks, 4 sacks his rookie year, 8.5 total. I felt like this was the year he was going to take off. Mike Zimmer said pretty much as much. He said just with all the packages and the way they're using Micah Parsons, moving him around a lot more so that he's not going to be easily identifiable, which with Dan Quinn, that was one of the biggest issues I had. He would get very consistently predictable when it came to how he used Micah Parsons a little bit. Mike Zimmer talking about how he's going to move guys around in chess pieces. And he said Sam Williams is going to play about 70-75% of the time, which is going to be a huge number for a guy like that. And that was going to open up so much opportunity and so much productivity, in my opinion, because now we're talking about going into year 3, year 4, year 5. Those are about the years that now you start to see these guys start to put it together. The game starts to slow down a little bit more. And we know Sam Williams, he has all the potential in the world. He just had to get rid of some of the boneheaded mistakes he would make sometimes. But unfortunately, again, he's not going to get that opportunity this year. It's just sad to see, because now you're talking about also a guy, which we're talking about just having some big movement just between the coaching staff. Marshawn Nealon, the 2nd round pick for the Cowboys in this past draft. Mike Zimmer says now he's pretty much probably going to be one of those guys that ends up seeing an uptick in his opportunity and his playing time. So I feel like if everything is going according to what the rumors are right now, Marshawn Nealon has been making a stamp, putting a stamp out there on the field and just showing that intensity. Obviously, we're talking about when getting into pads, that's when you're really going to be able to see the physicality. But I'm going to say right now, it's just still very unfortunate for a guy like Sam Williams will not be a part of this run the Cowboys can hopefully make. And hopefully he's able to get back, and hopefully we're able to kind of see some of his better days forward. But right now, we're going to, again, be looking to see what a Marshawn Nealon can do. We're going to be looking to see if he's going to be able to just kind of put it together. We're talking about, it's a lot to ask for from a rookie to be able to come in and be a highly productive member of your team. But we're talking about when you're drafting in the 2nd round, whether you feel it's a reach, whether you feel it's a good pick, whatever it is, you're going to be able to ask, you're going to be asked, to be at least a contributing member of this team. But now, again, with no Sam Williams with this team for the upcoming season due to that torn ACL he ended up with yesterday, being carted off the field. A guy like Marshawn Nealon, again, he's going to have all eyes on him. And I feel like we're talking about a Mike Zimmer. he's going to be very intentional with the way they bring him along and bring the rest of these guys along as well. So I feel like that at least is going to be one of those positives that you're going to say. You have a Mike Zimmer and the coaching staff that he brought in with him. They're going to be very intentional how they use a guy like Marshawn Kneeland. So we'll see exactly what that calls for going forward. Staying on the defensive side of the ball, talking about the linebacker group, it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to say interesting in the sense that it's exciting to me to see who exactly is going to rise to the top. We already know Eric Kendricks was brought in here, the former Minnesota Viking guy that has is very familiar with the way that Mike Zimmer likes to get things done. Eric Kendricks pretty much has that Mike linebacker, that middle linebacker, whatever you want to call it, locked in right now, because he's going to be out there pretty much being your second coach out there, knowing how to get guys in the right position, tell them where they need to be, and getting things lined up. But when we're talking about the rest of the linebacker group, we're talking about Maurice Lafau out of Notre Dame, which Mike Zimmer talks about as if he loves his game. He loves his ability and what he can bring to this team potentially. And then a guy, again, I'm very high on, we're talking about DeMarvion Overshown, who's put on about 10 pounds of muscle himself, and he looks very comfortable moving around with it right now. I'm going to say it's going to be interesting to see exactly how we use these guys, because if you're talking about moving around on Micah Parsons, playing a little bit of linebacker at certain points, and just being more of a chess piece as well, how exactly is this linebacker rotation going to be laid out a little bit? Then you're throwing in other guys, talking about a Damone Clark, who he is more instinctual. That's your guy that you love to just see play with his athleticism. And I feel like the less he has to think, the better he's going to be. So hopefully he's able to put into positions where he's not having to use a lot of his mental. And again, at some points, because you're having a guy like Eric Kendricks, and I'm going to say, when you're talking about at the linebacker position in the NFL, sometimes you do have to loosen up on what guys are, their responsibilities are, and sometimes that'll allow them to be able to play faster. That's why it's very important to build a team around what you actually have, not what you want them to be, what you hope they are, what you actually have. And so I said, bringing in a guy like Eric Kendricks, he's not the younger version of himself, but he's still very capable. Again, I believe of being something similar to just being that veteran presence and being in the right space at the right positions at the right time. And it's going to open up some opportunities for a guy like Damone Clark to be able to play off instinct. But I'm going to say again, Maurice Lafau, and we're talking about a DeMarvion Overshown, that is going to be interesting to see exactly how they're employed this upcoming season, because I feel like we've gotten more athletic, we've gotten faster, we've gotten stronger, we've gotten more instinctual in the linebacker position, because we saw last year, you're talking about having to play a guy like Marquise Bell at linebacker. These are obviously things that you were not hoping to see, because at some point you can't be able to play this hybrid type defense, because one thing, I'm going to say 100% of the time, because obviously it'll work in certain points in games and parts of the season, I'll say even more so. But when you're talking about getting to the playoffs and now people are starting to game plan forward, and you start to see, once teams start to realize Marquise Bell's a smaller guy, we're going to run to him a little bit, and sometimes that would cause some more issue in our run game. You're now going to be looking and saying, how exactly do we alleviate that? And I'm going to say now we've kind of put ourselves in a position where we could be more of a physical team overall. And also talking about being physical, Mazi Smith, who has put on much more weight, because obviously when he comes into the league out of Michigan, so our first round pick, he's being brought in to be a mauler, be able to be brought in as a more of a people eater, take up space, open up things, show power, just pretty much maul guys. And Dan Quinn kind of wanted to see him do a little bit different, and sometimes that can be hard to do when you're having to change something that you've become accustomed to being. And again, talking about that big, huge, dominant force. The biggest issue you saw from Mazi Smith last year was just his getting off the ball. Because one thing you can say, even though you're very strong and you can just move people, we're talking about playing against professional offensive linemen, guys in their 30s, guys that have been in this league for 5, 6, 7, 8 plus years at this point. You're playing against veterans. They know and understand how to use your own body weight and your strength against you. And the biggest thing you kind of heard out of camp up to this point, again, it's still early on. We haven't seen really anything in pads. But Mazi Smith, he started to put that weight back on. He's still as strong as can be. And what you're starting to hear about is that he's getting off quicker off the ball. That is going to be major if he can actually show that in pads and show that when the games are actually real. So this is going to be interesting to see going forward. Staying on the same thing, we're talking about the defensive side of the ball really quickly. Trayvon Diggs, I believe he was asked about, I think it was much more of a mock scrimmage type game a day or so ago. And pretty much Trayvon Diggs is out there just playing around with Micah Parsons. We've come used to that as well. And Trayvon Diggs, I believe he's asked when is he going to be back, when is he thinking he can be back, and I believe that the terms he used about maybe about 10 days. So about a week to 10 days, we could potentially see Trayvon Diggs back out there. But as of right now, you've seen a guy, 5th round pick, Kalen Carson, the cornerback, getting lots of opportunities, and I believe he comes down with an interception yesterday. So we're going to see exactly if we can continue to keep this room as strong as possible. Obviously, you saw when we lose Trayvon Diggs last year to injury, you have Stephon Gilmore, the veteran presence he was last year, not with the team right now. We're talking about now you're looking and saying you have a Trayvon Diggs eventually going to be back, but now DaRon Bland is an all-pro corner, an outside corner, not just that slot variety we come used to in his first year and so, some change with this team. So DaRon Bland now an all-pro outside corner. Trayvon Diggs an all-pro level outside corner, potentially when we get him back. You're talking about Jordan Lewis, who I still feel is very capable, who makes plays, especially towards the second half of the season last year. He started to make plays in that nickel corner a little bit more, that slot corner position. So now you're adding other guys in here, talking about potentially what could be again where you're asking who exactly is going to be the other guy to step up. Like I said, Kalen Carson to me still has that potential. And Eric Scott Jr., this is going to be a guy who's still going to get opportunities because I believe 5th, 6th round pick last year. You're now going to be asked, some of these young guys towards the bottom of the rotation, they're going to have to improve, because now when you're talking about when training camp ends, we're starting to wrap up, and then you get into preseason, a game or so, two, that you're going to be able to see what some of these guys can actually do. Now you're going to be looking to fight for your life when you start getting to that bottom of the bubble. So now you're playing on special teams, some of that. But it's going to be interesting to see how the cornerback in the secondary room is going to look, because you still have Mike Zimmer again, and he is no nonsense when it comes to doing the right things and playing hard. So that's something I feel like we can always tip our hat to, because one thing you know for sure, if you're going to be on the field for Mike Zimmer, you're going to be playing all out. So that's a good thing going forward, and I don't think you complain about that much. So just get these guys healthy, get them back in the fold, and get some of these young guys some more experience, and see how we can roll going forward. Before I wrap it on up, again, really quick, we're going to talk about just Trey Lance. Obviously, he's going to be getting majority of the reps. I believe Mike McCarthy pretty much confirmed that Trey Lance is going to be getting majority of the preseason reps, which is exactly what he needs, because I feel like this is a guy, I believe, he hasn't even thrown many passing touches since even junior high school. So we're talking about a guy who's still fresh, going to North Dakota State, and then finding himself being a first-round pick to the San Francisco 49ers. We know exactly how that worked out. And then finding himself now with the Dallas Cowboys. Cooper Rush right now has that backup job, I believe, because again, it's more familiarity. You know, at the end of the day, Cooper Rush is what he is, but he's still a serviceable guy as long as you can keep the game within range, no major mistakes, and just keep everything lined up. Cooper Rush can help win you a couple games in a tight pinch in the season, but obviously Dak Prescott is your number one guy. But Trey Lance, he's going to have to improve, because this in video that we've seen and some of the talk coming out of Trey Lance right now in training camp, early training camp, obviously, the first few days, his progression, his time, and just, I guess, decision making has got to be much quicker. Obviously, sometimes things are going to be more simplified when you get into pads, and sometimes now you kind of feel that weight off you. You're not just throwing on air anymore. You're not just you're actually going to be able to feel that physicality of football. So sometimes that can open up some more confidence for some guys. So we'll see exactly how Trey Lance plays going forward, but I still feel like he's a young piece that you want to keep an eye on, because at the end of the day, I feel like, again, we do know what Cooper Rush is. I'm not going to say Cooper Rush is going to be here in anything long term. So Trey Lance, whether he finds another deal on the open market, whether we find another trade partner for him, or if he ends up just being one of those key backup guys for this team going forward, we'll see. But there's going to be a lot to talk about, especially when preseason rolls around, and now you're actually being able to look at what Trey Lance can do, because again, Mike McCarthy confirmed he will be getting majority of the reps, if not all, I believe. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on going forward, just to see, because he does still have a lot of rawness to his game. And if you're talking about being raw, you need a lot of reps to get yourself as comfortable as you can. So, and also really quick before we head out, the offensive line, obviously this doesn't mean anything, we're not in pads yet, but first round pick Tyler Guyton is finally starting to get some first team reps, I believe, at left tackle position. And we're talking about, that's a guy the Cowboys are going to have to hang their hat on, because we got so used to what Tyron Smith could do for this team. We're talking about healthy Tyron Smith when he's playing and was actually out there. This is a guy that was your stable part of the especially that left side of the offensive line for years and years. We're talking about all-pro, many-time all-pro. We're talking about a many-time Pro Bowler in Tyron Smith. You got used to that when he was out there, because the worst case scenario, Tyron Smith was at least going to be very high-level serviceable tackle in this league. So Now you're having to replace him with a young guy, talking about a rookie in Tyler Guyton. His biggest attribute is his footwork. He's light-footed pretty much as well. His footwork has gotten better. The biggest thing you want to see him was work on that strength, because I believe also rookie coming in, Cooper Beebe, is not with the first team as center position, which a lot of us had hoped that he would be right now. But again, there's still plenty of time. Brock Hoffman is holding that down right now. There's plenty of time to get this thing on track, because at the end of the day, offensive line is going to have to be something that's consistent, because I'm always talking about offensive line is a chain. You want to keep everybody on the same page, and I don't like moving guys in and out and in and out of that rotation, because now guys can't get comfortable with what the strengths are to the guy next to him, and at some point you're going to have to find that continuity. So if Tyler Guyton being out there with the first team, that's a great sight to see for starters, and I want to see exactly how Cooper Beebe can continue to improve as well. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share down below. Again, throw out your comments, throw out your likes for sure. We have to get these likes in, and especially the comments. Like I said, I want to know what you guys think. How do you feel about the contract situations of Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb? Micah Parsons pretty much said he wants to be with this team. He's planning on building a house in Dallas. He wants to stay here for the long term. So we'll see how that all works out. But how do you feel about the pieces around that? Do you feel like Dak Prescott is a guy that should get that long-term deal and be the face of the franchise for years going forward? How do you feel about CeeDee Lamb? How do you feel about the Micah Parsons situation? Let me know down below in the comments section. I appreciate you guys for all the support. We will keep these things rolling, because training camp is just now starting to really heat up. And off season, we already know Cowboys talk is always going to be in the news. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Again, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share, and we will be back with more as it comes. I appreciate you guys, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.